And let's start off. Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome out to tonight's training webinar. I'm Shade Foray here with Stephen Swenson, and this is pretty much a regular routine we do every Wednesday night.
Yeah, exactly. Each week we try to tackle a different topic, and if you have any questions as we go through the training this evening, you can go ahead and ask them in the question and answer section or the chat section. We'll get to them as many as we can, but tonight we want to go over redemption deeds. It's not something we talk about a lot, but it is an important investment strategy that I think we should go over.
Yeah, in fact, redemption deeds are kind of a weird hybrid, but they are used in several states, and there are some excellent opportunities. A lot of investors tend to avoid redemption deeds because they're kind of weird. They've got a weird mix of time involved and buying deeds, but at the same time, though, redemption periods can be very short in a lot of cases, and the opportunities, there's some areas that offer redemption deeds that have tremendous opportunity.
Yeah, we'll go through, the different redemption deed states tonight and explain how it works. But there is definitely an opportunity, and a place like Texas is a redemption deed state, and that's and a lot of people think it's one of the more sexier markets in the country.
Yeah, it definitely attracts a lot. I mean, it attracts local investors, but the other advantage with it is that it can't be done online. At least not their primary auctions.
Yeah.
And so it's a good way to limit the competition as well. Plus, they hold auctions every month.
Yeah, exactly, and that's going to be something that's common with a couple of the redemption deed states.
So if anybody's unsure about exactly what redemption deeds are and how they work, we know that they're one of the three systems that we have. So if you understand tax liens, tax deeds, redemption deeds are that third system that we're talking about. And the best way to describe them really is kind of a hybrid between tax liens and deeds. They are tax deeds that are sold with a redemption period attached to it.
Yeah, and I think it's a pretty good explanation. Essentially, when we're buying a lien, we're not buying, we don't have any ownership in that property. We're just essentially buying a lien on the property. When we're buying a redemption deed, we are essentially not taking ownership of the property. Well, I guess it's kind of depends on how you look at it. In a case like Texas, you are taking ownership.
Yeah, you can take physical ownership.
Yeah. They just haven't recorded the deed. So what they do is they create the deed in a lot of these scenarios, but they're not necessarily recording the deed and putting it 100% in your name. So it's just like Shade said. Essentially, it's a tax deed. As far as the way it's bid, the way that the auction is.
Yeah, and the way you have to treat it as an investor, you have to treat it like it's a tax deed. You have to treat every deed, redemption deed you bid in, as a property that you intend to acquire.
Yeah.
And that way, if the property doesn't redeem, you essentially have you've got the property. You haven't made a mistake. There are some things that make redemption deeds a little bit different. Redemption periods in general are going to be shorter than with redemption deeds than they are normally with most tax liens. Meaning that it's more common to have a redemption deed that can range just from a few months to 2 years on the long end, but most of them are going to be between 2 months and a year.
Yeah, exactly. Most of them, like Shade said, are between 2 months and a year, 6 months and a year, kind of in that type of a time frame. So they have a very short redemption period. The only difference to that would be Texas homestead properties that have the 2 year. So in most cases, in most of the property that you're buying, they're going to have a short redemption period, 6 months to a year. You are essentially also going to kind of something that separates them from a tax lien is they offer a penalty return instead of an interest rate. So if we're buying a tax lien in Florida, that 18% is broken up over 12 months. And so we're essentially earning 1.5% per month. What makes redemption deeds different is that regardless of when you redeem, you're going to get the full percentage. So, after 6 months in a tax lien in Florida, if you were earning 18%, you're only going to earn 9% over that 6 months because you're going to be earning 1.5% per month. If you purchase a redemption deed on a Tuesday and the property redeems on a Wednesday, you're going to still get that full penalty. So in Texas, that would be 25%. You could attend the auction on a Tuesday, property is redeemed that Thursday, you're still going to get a full 25% off your investment.
Yeah, and if it takes 11 and a half months in Texas before it redeems, you're still going to get, that same, that same percentage. What is it, 25%?
Yeah, 25% per year
annually. And so what would happen though is most properties in Texas are not classified as homestead properties. Most of the properties in Texas don't meet that qualification, and so they have a redemption period of 6 months. Most of the property you're going to buy there in Texas will have a redemption period of 6 months. It pays out the 25% penalty rate if it redeems, and the chances of redemption with redemption deeds is not as high as it is with liens. With liens, we know that 95+% of tax liens redeem. With redemption deeds, it's a little bit lower percentage than that because the amounts are dramatically increased.
Yeah, and the way the auction is held, I think it's at least a 50-50 shot, if not higher, depending on the type of property. And when we're talking about Texas, they're going to include ownership rights, and we'll get into some more details about that. But essentially, you could rent out the property, you could live in the property. If it's some type of structured property during that redemption period, you actually receive ownership rights. So if you were renting out the property, you could be receiving that rental income.
Yeah. Now, I think in terms of who invests into redemption deeds, really, you could have lien investors that would also invest into redemption deeds. But generally, one of the things the lien investors have in common is usually they're not looking for property.
Yeah.
They usually don't want property. And if you were to buy redemption deeds, you certainly have a much higher percentage chance of acquiring property than you do with, let's say, like a tax lien. Again, you basically have to buy it with the intention of getting the property.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, when we're reviewing these, you're going to do the same type of due diligence and research as you would as if it's a tax deed.
Yeah, the one thing that is a little bit different here in Texas, I don't know if we go into homestead properties here, we probably do at some point here.
Yeah.
Okay, so the bidding basically when you're dealing with redemption deeds is going to begin with all of the back taxes, penalties, fees that are owed. So that aspect of it is just like a tax deed. So we're dealing with multiple years. It could be multiple years worth of delinquent taxes that are owed. That essentially the opening bid amount is what's owed to the county.
Yeah, and just like a tax deed, it's also going to bid up in price. So they're going to use a premium bidding method. So that's what's going to separate it from a tax lien as well. And usually in a tax lien, you're bidding down the interest rate, or if you're paying a premium, it's minimal. With this case, it's going to be like a tax deed auction. The auction could start at $10,000 and the property could sell for $20,000. So essentially, you approach it just like you would a tax deed. The only difference is that redemption period of when you take full ownership.
Yeah. Also, something else is that the interest rate you earn is going to be based on the full amount. That's important. In some places, when you go to buy something like a lien, that's using a premium bidding system, you'll only make interest on the initial amount of the lien and not for the overbid. But in Texas, if we buy a property for $20,000, we'll earn the return on the $20,000.
Yep.
And let's see here. Other things. Yeah, the penalty pretty much. So we talked about how the penalty works. The only way the penalty really changes at all in Texas is if it goes over a year. If it goes over a year, basically that penalty rate starts over again, and upon redemption, you automatically get the first 25% that you were entitled. And you automatically earn an additional 25% as well if it goes over a year. So it's possible you could bid on a property, and if you actually have to wait for over a year, then you'll earn a 50% return on it.
Yeah, and like we talked about, the redemption periods are going to be shorter, so we're usually looking at 6 months to a year. And then essentially once the redemption period is passed, then the county will go ahead and issue you the deed in the case of Texas. In the case of Georgia, you'll actually start the foreclosure process. So it's going to depend on the state, and each redemption deed state is actually going to be quite a bit different than the other state. For example, Texas allows you to have ownership rights during the redemption period. Georgia does not. And so, you know, there's going to be different drawbacks depending on the property or the state, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah. You know, these are the 5 redemption deed states. I think this is all of them, right?
Yeah, it's the ones that are, there's some that are kind of a little bit of kind of like a redemption, like Pennsylvania, for example.
Yeah.
But, you know, not a lot of our students are investing in the first upset sale at the Pennsylvania auction.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, there are several states that kind of have a type of redemption period that they claim after you buy,
yeah,
but it's not really enforced. Like,
these are the straight up redemption deed states, offer penalties type of, you know, Connecticut does deed sales as well, depending on there, but we'll go through and talk about each one of these states.
all right, so one thing is about Texas too is there are so many counties.
Yeah.
You know, there are so many counties there, and each one operates independently. So you've got a lot of tax sales that occur, and you know, a lot of these counties are holding monthly sales. You know, some counties may not do it as often. Counties generally will conduct sales as often as they need to, and you know, you do have a lot of area there, a lot of different potential places to buy from.
So here's kind of the stat information, pretty much stuff we already know. They offer 25% a year. Like Shade mentioned earlier, if it's one of the properties that has a 2-year redemption period, then you're going to make 25% for the first year, and as soon as it goes into the first day of the second year, you're going to make an additional 25%. So if it redeemed after 12 months and 5 days, you would make 25% off the first year, 25% off the second year, so essentially you'd make a 50% return.
Yeah. Also, with Texas, they do offer over-the-counter properties, but they have their own terminology for it. So when you're looking at over-the-counter property in Texas, they refer to those properties as struck-off properties or part of their struck-off list. Essentially, after they've offered property a couple of times, they'll put all those properties on the same list of properties that have basically been struck off. I don't know why they use that term, struck off the rolls, struck off standard list. But basically, it's their inventory of county-held land.
Yeah, exactly. And like Shay talked about, the one nice thing about Texas and Georgia is the same, is they're going to have auctions every single month. So if the county is really small, then they may, you know, hold one every other month. But a good portion of the counties, and many of them, will hold auctions every single month. And so that there's always going to be new inventory essentially coming up on the market. These are some properties that were offered up in an auction about a few months ago. But we can see here, you know, here's 4 different single family homes. The opening bid, you know, can start as low as $3,000 on the property on the right, the top right, and then the property on the bottom right can go up as high as $32,000. But then we can also see the equivalent assessed value and Zillow value next to those properties. So with a $32,000 opening bid, you're bidding on a property that is essentially worth $500,000.
Yeah, in fact, that's one of the nice things that you'll find with a lot of the Texas properties is that their bid to value ratio, at least prior to the sale starting, the bid to value ratios are generally pretty good. You know, property tax amounts and the cost of living in places are different, but sometimes we run into counties that just charge so much for their taxes that their bid to values a lot of times are not very good to begin with, and it's harder to find good deals. Whereas in other places, you've got properties that start out with a very low bid amount compared to the value, and with those types of properties, how good of a deal you can get really is just dependent upon how much competition you're dealing with for that particular property.
Yeah, I mean, if, let's say this property on the bottom right, you know, it got started at the auction at $32,000, and we bid it up to $100,000. Even at $100,000, you know, there's still potential $400,000 worth of profit. But if this was on a 6-month redemption period, by the end of 6 months, we're either going to get back our $100,000 plus an additional 25 grand. You know, I mean, 25 grand in 6 months return off 100 grand, that's incredible. or we're going to get this $500,000 home.
Yeah. In fact, it's even possible for a property to be listed as a homestead property, for it to qualify as a homestead property, it generally has to be owner occupied.
Oh, it has to, yeah.
So what we're talking about there is, the same. The mailing address is basically the same as the property location when it comes to the owner.
And they'll also have to go through the homestead qualification. So it's almost like something that you have to qualify for with the county. So there's going to have to be paperwork that they fill out.
It's a tax exemption.
Yeah, exactly. And so, even properties that are sometimes have the same owner or the same address can sometimes not be homestead properties. That's going to be a good clue that it could be, but usually you can look down there and you'll see that homestead exemption, and so we'll know for sure if it's a homestead. And if it's not a homestead exemption, then we're only looking at the 6 months.
Yeah, it's dramatically shorter, that 6-month time period. And the truth is, when you're buying a lot of properties, even over-the-counter properties, it can take 2 to 3 months just to get the deed after you've paid for it. So a 6-month redemption period is not really that long when you're looking at the big picture of buying deeds in general.
Yeah, well, and anything like a lot, commercial property, rentals, anything like that is only going to have a 6-month redemption period. And so even with the 2-year redemption period, let's say that you did buy one that was a homestead property, you could still rent it out during that entire time.
Yeah, you could still utilize it, which is it's really pretty remarkable. That you can take a possession of the property during that time, because it really takes away most of the disadvantages of redemption deeds. The only thing you couldn't do is just transfer ownership. You can't actually sell the property in terms of transferring ownership, but you could absolutely do whatever else you want with it. The only thing you're not going to want to do is really sink a lot of money into it in case it redeems.
Yeah, and one thing to bring up as we're talking about Texas is Texas, most of the counties, not all of them, some counties will do it, but most of them are going to use some type of attorney or law service to essentially handle their sales, do a lot of the advertising of the sales, conduct the sales. These are the 3 big companies that handle a good portion of the auctions. We have these links listed on the website underneath the Texas profile and underneath the over-the-counter tab as well. That'll take you to them. But if you're interested in Texas, then you can go and click on some of these links on the website and start reviewing the different properties that are coming up. In fact, we'll show you how to do that here in a little bit.
On the over-the-counter properties you're going to get in Texas, again, they're struck off properties. They're
one thing to quickly add is that with the 2-year redemption period, farmland is included within that. Now, we don't see a ton of farmland coming up for auction, but they wanted to protect farmers so they wouldn't lose their land in 6 months if they had a bad harvest or something. So farmland will also have a 6-month redemption period. We'll see less of that, but that is something to be
2-year?
2-year redemption period. But anything rentals, commercial, vacation, homes, anything like that, we're looking at that 6-month redemption period. And all of the counties will refer to these over-the-counters as struck off.
Yeah, in fact, pretty much every building lot, every residential, every piece of land that is in there, nearly all of them, if it's listed as residential, it's 6 months.
Yeah.
Listed as commercial, 6 months. It's a very small percentage of property that qualifies as farmland. Also, the properties, many of the properties you're going to get from the struck off list are already past the redemption period. They're basically just over-the-counter properties that you can purchase. Do they begin the redemption period again when you buy? Or is it? I don't think it is. I think they start on the day of the sale, and it basically goes from that point on. So, if you don't want to deal with the redemption period, you can get struck off properties that are past it.
Georgia is another state that offers redemption deeds. Similar to Texas, they're going to have auctions every single month. They have a 1-year redemption period, and they also offer a pretty good return at 20%. I guess the biggest drawbacks to Georgia is that the investor's going to need to do the foreclosure at the end of the redemption period. But there is, good properties that are picked up in Georgia. In fact, one of my first success stories that I had with a student was a single mother who was able to pick up a single family home. Actually, it was a condo at the Georgia sale. And so there's opportunity there. They do have the auctions every single month, but you are going to need to do the foreclosure, and you don't have ownership rights during the period.
Yeah. And by the way, when we talk about you doing the foreclosure, what we're normally talking about is self-executing versus non-self-executing foreclosure. And you find states do it both ways. There are states like Georgia and Arizona, and others where following the end of the redemption period, it's the responsibility of the lien holder to initiate and pursue foreclosure. In other states like Florida,
South Carolina,
Colorado, they utilize what's known as a self-executing foreclosure, which is where the county pretty much handles all of the foreclosure proceedings. And both systems can be great places to invest. It shouldn't be a reason not to invest in an area, but it's something you certainly have to plan for as well.
Yeah, and also include that in the cost as well. So if it's $1,000 to foreclose on a property in Georgia, then we'll want to keep that in mind when we're bidding, and we come to the end of the redemption period that we're going to need to do that.
Yeah. Hawaii also qualifies as a redemption deed state. They have what's penalty rate of 12%?
Yeah, and they use both a premium bid and a sealed bid. Georgia uses a premium bid as well, so it's just going to bid up the price of the property. They don't offer over the counter, and they don't have a huge amount of properties that come up every year, but they do have properties that'll come up, so they will have their yearly auction essentially. And it can be, there has been great properties that have been picked up, but they're not as big a list as some of the other areas.
Yeah.
So, don't plan on being able to get your beat fudge property in Hawaii at 10 cents on the dollar, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, probably not so much, but they do have some stuff that'll come up. Tennessee also is the last tier of the redemption deed states. They've got a penalty rate of 10%. It's also a 1-year redemption period. So most of these are 1 year or less with all of these here that we're talking about. They do have over-the-counter properties. They will generally call them their surplus properties. And those terms like knowing specifically what a county calls their leftover property can make a big difference when you're trying to search for it and find it, because they'll have specific terms, and it's the only term you can really use to find it.
Yeah, and if you guys have questions on any of the states, or as you're looking at different states, go and reference the state profile guides on the website. We have a ton of good information in there. We'll have links to different information. So if you have questions, it's a good resource for you. Connecticut is a state, and we wanted to bring it up because they are a redemption deed state, or they do redemption deeds, but it's not one that you're going to be purchasing redemption deeds in very likely.
So most of their stuff in bulk.
Yeah, essentially what they will generally do, like the city of, can't think of the city name right now.
Hartford.
Yeah, Hartford is a good example. Will sell, all of their tax liens to essentially one hedge fund. And so there's not the type of individual bidding that goes on in other states, but we wanted to at least bring it up so that you guys are aware. But they do have tax deed auctions there. So they'll have tax deed sales as well, and we'll include them on the website. But we just wanted to at least bring it up, and so that you guys are aware of it. And, there's not going to be much redemption deed action going on there unless essentially you're doing the deeds.
Yeah. We've kind of talked about a lot of the benefits and drawbacks here, already. I mean, it's a trade-off between the time frame, the time that is tying up your capital and the investment opportunity. But fortunately, it's not too long of an investment. In a lot of those areas, if it does redeem, that's also a win.
It's definitely a shorter term investment than a tax lien. For the most part, most of the auctions are going to be held live on site. Tennessee has had a couple of auctions in the past that have been done through one of the online auction providers, but really it's going to be done at the county courthouse. And for Georgia and Texas, they have their tax sales on the first Tuesday of every month.
Yeah, it's true. There are like hardly, I don't know if there's any online auctions for redemption deeds, are there?
Oh, you know which one I forgot? I forgot Louisiana.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how I forgot putting Louisiana on there. Well, we can go through and talk about Louisiana on the website anyway.
Yeah, in fact,
Louisiana is kind of a bit of a different state.
all right, let's switch this over here.
Actually, one thing that what makes Louisiana different is their county isn't set up based on English law like a lot of the other states are. It's actually based off French law and kind of the French system a bit. So it's a little bit different, but at least what they call it, parishes and versus counties and things like that.
Yeah, they are a little bit confusing that way.
So what we can do is go take a look at some of the upcoming Texas auctions, and we can do that a couple of different ways. If we go to the over-the-counter database and we click on the redemption deeds, we have the links there to some of these different websites.
Yeah, we got the individual law firms here. They're separated.
Yeah, and we have these on the state profile as well. But what we'll do is we'll click on some of these and essentially start reviewing some of the properties. Let's click on the next one too. There's one of them that has the map. I think it's this one here. So essentially, we can go down here and scroll down a little further, and we're going to go ahead and explore the Texas tax sales. So we can see some of this is kind of an online system that they have where we can, you can search by different counties or property types. We can search by struck off. We can search by resale. We can search by upcoming sale. And they do a resell there. Well, essentially they'll sell them at once and then they'll reoffer them again at the next sale. But we can also search by county or area. We could click on, one of these areas, Houston or San Antonio, any of them, and if we click on it, we can explore the sales. So we can see that there's 343 sales coming up. There's 57 resales. There's 463 future sales, meaning that the foreclosure is in the process coming up for sale. And then we see there's 183 struck off properties there. So once we clicked on that, we can see over on the right hand side some of the different properties that are essentially coming up. And if we wanted to narrow that down, we could do it up at the top if we wanted to take off.
Yeah, well, let's say we were just looking at struck off stuff and that was it.
Yeah, or struck off in sale, or so, or it's coming up, or I guess you could check out anything depending on what we're looking at.
Yeah. In fact, we can see the sales date here for these. October 2nd. It's probably the first Thursday.
Tuesday.
Or Tuesday, I mean, of the month here. If we were looking at just the struck off properties here to see what kind of inventory they've got, it's I guess one thing that's nice about looking at a list like this is it's a little bit more integrated, and so we can get we can see more information up front here, and we can also access more details just by clicking on a few links. So if we were to look,
you look, see, it's $6,600 estimate bid, just value is $54,000.
Yeah.
Any of these properties could be potential properties that could be worth looking into.
Oh, I think I clicked on the wrong one here. Let me go back here. It was the one right.
Maybe it was that one.
Yeah, it's the more details down here below. All right, so we can at least get some additional information here about it. Let's see what this tells us. Yeah, we can see the struck off amount right there. But the minimum bid, what's interesting about that is that the minimum bid is less.
Yeah.
You know, they don't necessarily require the full.
I think that's the assessed value. So I think the adjusted value is the assessed value. That's what I'm assuming.
Yeah.
But maybe not.
Yeah, I'm sure that probably is what it is. The struck off amount.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if that is. Oh, so right here, notice tax years 2012 and 13 are not included in the sale and must be paid by the bidder in addition to the bid amount. That's important to know.
Yeah.
You know, before you go to bid on a property, you know, to find out that they haven't included 2 of the years for the sales, which I don't know why they do that. It's kind of dumb. But we at least know.
You know, probably because we're looking at a struck off property versus an upcoming sale.
Yeah. Yeah. If we were looking, let's see the sales. Let's pull up here one of the properties for the upcoming sale here. So what, the adjusted value, estimated minimum bid, you know, those numbers look crazy.
Yeah, well, and one thing would have to do with a lot of these is you know, once we found a property that looked like something we would be interested in, then would probably go to, you know, Jefferson, the website, and then check, you know, the parcel information as well.
Yeah, in fact, we'd probably get quite a bit more information from county website from it than we can really get access right here, just off the bat. But yeah, there are so many counties that you can choose from too, and so much more property. I mean, there's so much more property in Texas being sold than most people would ever guess.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we could go through these different websites and just see list after list after list.
Yeah, and well, I mean, if you just look at some of the struck off numbers that we've got alone, you know, as we click on different counties here, you know, there's just a lot. 414, 39, 50, and there's so many places here.
Yeah, and for those of you that haven't done any deals yet, you know, going through and finding one of these deals could, I mean, really all you've got to do is find one good deal for your first one. And so as you're going through and researching, you find that one good deal that you can pick up, whether that be a tax lien or redemption deed or tax deed.
That's a new image too. That was from July 29th.
Yeah, so essentially we know,
20th.
At least we know the condition, you know, as of a couple of months ago was what it is. It's not a sexy property by all means, but
you know, they do give
based on the
too.
estimated, you know, opening bid and the just value.
You know, we ought to just check it and see how it compares, because the adjudged value isn't always an accurate reflection of what the property is actually worth.
The foreclosure estimate is 42.
Is
47. It's probably based off of the assessed value.
Yeah.
The estimate is 63. We see it's 936 square feet.
Yeah.
Built 1959. Oh, it's got a good sized lot.
Oh, what did that do? I wonder why that disappeared on us here. Let me pull it up again. And there we go.
Yeah, it's that big lot right there, I think.
Yeah, we can see that right there, and we can see the other properties around it, and you know, the properties that are around it. It's a good mix of properties that have good substantial value, but at the same time that are not overpriced, like you'll get in some places. So it is a pretty good mix.
Yeah.
Back to.
Wait. Yeah, I guess we could talk. Some of the lists are going to be, you know, similar to, you know, that list here where we're essentially, you know, we can see some of the upcoming sales for the resales.
Yeah.
You know, just, yeah, I kind of want to go through each one just so they can kind of become familiar with it. So with this type of a list, we're going to have all the rules right there, and whenever you're looking at an auction, plan on participating in the sale over the counter. It's so important to go through the rules and information. And then from there, we're going to get into the list, and it's going to be a PDF list like this or an Excel list, depending on the county. But we're going to essentially take that list and then go back to the county website and start researching these properties to see what they are.
You know, I wonder if these are all, I wonder if this includes some of their mortgage foreclosures, or if these are all straight tax foreclosures.
I think they're tax foreclosures. Sometimes they'll be like that property, for
Yeah.
example. I'm not sure why the taxes are so high. You'll see that occasionally in some of these areas. I don't know if there's liens against it, big liens or something they placed on it. But, you know, that one's more familiar. It's 18, 136, 7,000.
Yeah. Yeah. Not a ton in that county here.
Yeah.
But there's also so many of them.
Well, and the counties aren't incredibly huge. You know, there's 250 something of them. So sometimes there'll be kind of a smaller area, even if there's a ton of people within that area. But they will have them every single month, and so it's really just kind of that matter of not getting it the first month, waiting until the next month and participating.
Yeah, in fact, yeah. So all these properties are going to be offered up here on that Tuesday, you know, October 2nd. Performing the due diligence on them, some of the lists are set up pretty well. You know, this one's a little bit easier to read. And, you know, basically the same thing, or we would just go and locate the local county and search for their parcel search tool. You know, and you can see the assessed value on the property, $4,500, $4,465. Would you look at other counties?
Oh yeah, I was just, you know, wanted to show the different websites. There's one other too that has cells as well.
This one right here.
Yeah, you can see some of the different lists, kind of similar as the other website.
Yeah, each law firm has their you know, the counties that they work with. Trust properties for sale. Yeah, I wonder if that is. I'm just interested to look to see what that is. You know, to see if it's something like. To see if it's closer to like a mortgage foreclosure, you know, or something kind of like that, or if these are closer to kind of like a land bank.
I don't think they're tax sale properties. I think they're from trust, but I'd have to look up to make sure in that particular area, Texas.
Yeah, the value on all these properties is really pretty low. You know, at least looking at everything there.
Yeah.
Probably not high enough to be very interested in a lot of those. But let's see how it compares to one of the regular county. Yeah, it's interesting how all of these are being held on the same day initially here. And fortunately, like for instance, with this county, we've got direct links we can actually click on to pull up something.
Yeah, why don't we try clicking on one and see what happens.
And we'll accept the disclaimer, and nice, it gives us a GIS map.
Got to back out a little bit, I think.
Yeah, maybe it's like super close. Yeah, it does have a structure
We got
on
the
it.
site address right there. Why don't we look it up? I don't know if we can't.
Oh, let's see. There's any way I can highlight that now? Oh, sorry. We know it's 7100 Cork Drive. There's not too many of those in Brownwood. So probably pull it up here initially. Right here. Hey, there it is. Cork Drive in Brownwood, Texas.
That's a little house.
Yeah, we can see the precise property there, though. Interesting how that little place is laid out. And yeah, that's the property right here.
You can almost see where the lot lines are laid out.
Yeah, you really can see exactly where they're laid out. And what?
Little tiny house.
Yeah, that's like a little
It's like a studio.
yeah, like a 1 bedroom. What we can also do though is we can grab that, plug it into Zillow, see what Zillow says about it.
Almost looks like you could put that house on the back of a flatbed and take it somewhere.
I think you probably could.
280 square feet.
Wow. Yeah, that is tiny. Estimated market is 22,000. Foreclosure estimate of 16,000. Yeah, it is sitting on 0.34 acres, and we can see, yeah, we can see it listed there.
And one thing that is, checked is if it has the water and the power and the hookup and everything there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it looks like it's improved property. I don't know if there's any of these other ones here. Yeah, I guess that's kind of nice. Is that we can probably click on it here a little differently, but they've got a lot of properties that are available.
Yeah, one thing that's nice is you're going through a list like this and you don't want to essentially go to the next page or link to the next page. You can right click and pull it up in a different tab. That way you leave the page open.
It looks like it's got some kind of a structure on it too.
Yeah, 1221 Brewster.
Yeah. Pull this up here. This might even be maybe the fastest way.
Brewster.
Yeah, there we go. We can see this little property right here. Looks like it is a little house.
Yeah, these aren't the the flashiest properties, but if we're looking at dollar per dollar, the opening bid's pretty good on it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I'll bet the property value on this one is not too bad either.
It's got to be higher. I think it'd be higher than the last one with the being only 2,300 square feet.
Yeah, 36,000.
1,200 square feet.
Yeah, yeah. Which if we were to compare it there, almost looked like it was somewhere right there, huh?
Yeah.
Maybe that was it. But anyhow, it is a little bit easier list to work off of than some of them. Anytime you've got links accessible, I think it's worth using them.
Yeah, well, and you could go through and look and see which properties are. Now look at that resale. They're only starting at $100.
Yeah, so the resale may be a deal where they're willing to accept less than.
Yeah, some of the counties won't do that, but or they're at least they've lowered it. You can see some of them are 725, but they cut it off to a more round number.
Yeah, a lot of these are just minimum amounts.
And looking at these resale properties, that may be a way to go if they do offer it for lower than taxes owed. Anytime we can get properties for less than taxes owed, that's always going to be a big advantage, at least in our book.
Yeah, they've got a description of what the properties are in a lot of cases too, or at least in some cases it tells us if it's manufactured home or not. If it's let me see some of the things here, but again, there are so many more lists here than we really even have any time to cover. There are. Yeah, there's a lot of property that sells in Texas for anybody that's interested in potentially investing out there.
Yeah, and we'll pull up all the lists each month, but if you're interested in Texas, get familiar with some of these websites. Go, practice going around them, clicking on some of the different links, reviewing some of the different lists, because the more familiar you get with it, the easier it's going to go as you go back and research the area, research the properties. You're going to know exactly where you need to go to get the information you're looking for, whether that's a over-the-counter struck-off list or if it's a resale list or an upcoming auction.
In fact, just thinking about it, if we've got a minute, Unless we've got more stuff here.
No, the only thing I just wanted to quickly show was just the online auctions of Louisiana, so we could just briefly kind of talk about it, because I forgot to include them in the I knew I was missing one, because I usually had 7, you know.
Yeah.
But essentially, all of the auctions, a good portion of the auctions in Louisiana are going to be held by Civic Source. They have a similar type redemption period attached to it, like a redemption deed. But most of the auctions, not all of them, but most of them, are going to be essentially held on this online auction website. And so if you scroll down here a little bit further, you'll see some of the different auctions that are coming up on October 3rd. So, you know, we're in the process of listing these different auctions on the website. Some will have smaller properties, some of them are bigger. Looks like right now there's kind of less properties on these.
Yeah, in fact, yeah, a lot of these are just really small parishes, you know, that don't have.
Yeah, and some of them had bigger sales before. I don't know if they're doing like a reseller, if they just have less properties this time of year that they're foreclosing on. But it'll all be done through this online system. So it's, you know, you'll register for Civic Source and you can start participating in the auctions if you're interested in Louisiana.
I just wanted to take a look here and see what kind of information they'll provide us with here right off the bat. It does tell us what's required to buy it, you know, the deposit and
look at that, they have a 30-year title abstract done.
Yeah.
A lot of fees.
Yeah, tons of fees. A ridiculous amount of fees, really. If you look at it, I mean, you know, title insurance endorsement of $1,000, closing documentation, title update, title insurability underwriting, courier and delivery, notary service. They charge $175 for notary service even. That is ridiculous.
You know, one thing I don't know about this particular, but I know Civic Source in some of the other counties, I think it was in Missouri, they had an auction 6 months ago or some time back, but I think you could actually get title insurance through them.
Oh yeah, which if you can get title insurance through, you know, through somebody like Civic Source, it's the same thing as getting quiet title on the property in a lot of ways. You know, you can sell a property to somebody that, you know, that is getting a loan to buy it.
Yeah.
But yeah, look how crazy that is. The tax total on it's only $45 per year. So this has got to be a property that's worth almost nothing that they just threw all those costs at. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Also, you know, something else that we wanted to just briefly hit on, for any of you that are looking at tax liens or trying to buy over-the-counter liens, which we've had some of you contact us at different points because you're trying to buy over-the-counter liens in some place like Florida. You know, if you're looking for over-the-counter liens, part of what we wanted to talk about is the fact that you're not going to be able to find them everywhere. You know, they're not necessarily going to be great everywhere. So, for instance, if we're looking for over-the-counter tax deeds over there in Florida, or over-the-counter liens in Florida, we're over here in the over-the-counter liens section, and under Florida, these are all direct links to the Real Auction or Grant Street Group pages where you can see all of the over-the-counter liens that they have available. But what you're going to find in a lot of places is that their inventory is junk. Okay, and that happens especially over time as properties you know, sit there longer, and as the amount that's owed on them increases. And so in some cases, you're going to find properties that are, I mean, some counties may not have anything that's available. I think this is one of the counties I was looking at where everything they had was just junk. You know, you could go through the entire list and pretty much everything was junk. On the other hand, there are counties where there's still, you know, decent properties that are available.
Yeah, well, what'll happen, especially with some of these online auction websites where, you know, you can just buy them right off the website. A lot of these hedge funds or bigger money investors will go through right after the auction, and maybe they have $500,000 they want to spend, and they'll go through a county like this and pick up any of the over-the-counters that may have slipped through the cracks. And so, you know, in an area like this where maybe it's already been picked through, we may search for an area that doesn't have an online auction, or an online auction that has, you know, less people that's gone on it and picked over it.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact,
That's a mobile home.
Yeah, part of what we look for, you know, when we're dealing with over-the-counter tax liens is to look at the roll-up and to deal with the roll-up on it.
It's actually not a bad lien.
Yeah, this one, you know, it's got 3 unpaid certificates
It can't be that high
on it. You know, it's listed as a mobile home. 1 certificate that has redeemed. It's only a $250 lien, so it's not that big. But you click right here to see the certificate history, and we can see which ones of these are open and which ones are closed. So we can see, you know, the one from 2012 is closed. We've got one from 14, 15, 16 are the ones that are open. You know, with the total being roughly maybe $1,000.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, and not bad. I mean, at least based off of the assessed value, this would actually be a great lien.
Yeah, this one wouldn't be too bad. You know, and part of what we're looking for, especially as we get to lower dollar liens, are something like this, okay, where you have the numbers may not be great on the property, but what we're primarily looking at are that you've got 5 certificates that are redeemed, and you've got 2 certificates, you know, that are unpaid. So what it tells you is that you've got a property owner that's engaged with the process and is paying off the taxes. They're just delinquent, you know. So what it means is that these are most likely all going to redeem here at some point as soon as the property owner has enough to pay it off, essentially.
Yeah, well, and if you did had to foreclose on it, it's going to be done through the county. You're just going to fill out the deed application, and the roll-up is not going to be huge.
Yeah, so if you're looking for low dollar liens, some of these sites are going to make it pretty difficult because a lot of the stuff they have that's lower dollar, in some cases, is just not a lot of good stuff. You know, you might find a higher concentration of junk.
What's kind of funny is the 2 that we looked at actually look like that's not usually the way it goes. With the 2 that we happened to look at, the $200 ended up being, just at a quick glance, you know, look like they could be decent investments. But
yeah,
it's not normally the case.
Yeah. Something else you can pay attention to are just the numbers. You know, the year. The older they get, generally the lower the quality is. So if you can buy newer liens, it's always a good idea to buy newer liens. Like for instance, this one right here, face value on it's only $910, and it has 7 unpaid certificates. And if we look at it right here, we can see all of these unpaid certificates, you know, which probably started out very small, maybe $140, and are up to $400, you know, a piece now. You know, and so here it is. You have one that is toxic. You know, there's a lot of these. What I did find though, in some of these counties are, like for instance in Duval, there is a high number of properties that are great, that are more money. You know, so in other words, if you are dedicated to tax lien investing, and that's what you want to do, there are some great liens that you can buy here that are a little bit more money. You know, for instance, let's look here. This one's 4629. Let's see what it looks like. Oh, hold on, I clicked on the wrong thing.
You know, one general rule to follow, and it's not always the case, but I would probably look at liens that are at the very oldest 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Because if you're looking at a lien from 2010, or I mean, well, I guess by then the lien would actually be off. After 7 years, the lien, like if you bought a lien in 2010, by 2017, that lien would actually no longer be valid. You have to foreclose on liens within 7 years. And so, you know, if we're looking at a lien that's 5 years old, that probably means there's at least 5 or 6 other years worth of delinquent taxes on it.
Yeah. You know, with these particular ones, this county didn't have the additional link that I could click on that would tell me how many certificates were remaining on it and how many were unpaid. They just give you the one link you can click on, and you know, basically pulls up this record. But what you can do from here is you scroll down to the bottom of the page. They've got the parcel tax record right here you can click on, and click on that, continue to tax collector's website, and this is the site here that gives us the information that we're looking for here on this property. So this is the lien we were looking at for $4,600. and we can see it was against a single family home. We can see the address right there, 1819 Plantation Oaks Drive. But this is what we want to see if we're going to buy a lien against a property, is something more along the lines of this. We want to be able to see that the roll-up is nothing compared to the property value. And this property was worth, $300,000. So this could have several years worth of taxes still owed, and it would, still be worth the money. But if we're looking at it from a redemption standpoint, this is the only lien that exists against the property. So it has, it's almost guaranteed to redeem. They also list nuisance and demolition liens there, which won't really matter to us so much as lien holders, but it does tell you a little bit about the property. If you have some nuisance liens, it's kind of a sign that the property is not as well kept, may have a higher chance going to foreclosure. But yeah, what I found was that a lot of these properties that were priced out, from as little as $1,500 on up, like most of these are good liens. And you can tell pretty quickly, if you look at them just based on the value, they've got a good high value to them. We can see this one's this one's a multi-family. But the first thing I would go and check on every time is that tax record, because I already know the value's up there around 100,000 plus. So I can go back in here and look and see. So they have the total amount that's owed, listed there at, at 16,300, and the value of the property is at 100 and something thousand. So it would still be worth it from an investment standpoint, even with the additional years there due to the value of the property.
Yeah, essentially, if you went to foreclose on it, you would be required to pay off those other liens. And that's one thing to kind of keep in mind when you're buying tax liens, is how much that total amount is and how soon you're going to be, how soon before you're able to essentially foreclose on it. So for this property, for example, if it's a 2017 year lien, we're going to have to, we may have to wait 2 years from May to be able to essentially foreclose on it. So there could be an additional 2 years worth of taxes on the property when we do foreclose on it. So we're going to want to keep that in mind and make sure that we have the capital available to foreclose on it if we need to.
What's interesting is that this property appears to have changed hands while it still had delinquent taxes owed against it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it went from that property owner to that property owner, I think, while these were still unpaid.
I wonder if it was a family deal or something.
Yeah, it could have been some kind of a weird transfer, like that. But yeah, normally it's simple enough, usually, I think, to determine, with these liens, especially when it comes to liens, you don't really have to know a lot of precise information about the property. The main thing you want to make sure of is just that there's not some massive roll-up waiting for you.
Yeah, and we have the Citus address right there. We can go check the Citus on Zillow, make sure the value's there, check Google Street View to see the condition, check out the roof.
Yeah, especially if we're looking at a higher dollar lien like this for $3,000 or $4,000, it's worth taking a few minutes just to see what the property is and to verify, things about it. But checking stuff like the roll-up is a minimum. You have to do that every time you go to buy a lien. You want to know what the status is of the past taxes. So again, if anybody wants, if you're looking at over-the-counter liens, you can check out that section of the website here under over-the-counter liens in Florida, and all of these are direct links to any of the over-the-counter liens they still have available, and generally pretty easy to buy.
Yeah, and if you really wanted to get nitty and gritty about it, you could download some of the lists that don't have the real auction over-the-counter or Grant Street Group over-the-counter option, and go through some of those counties, because there's probably a lot less people that have gone through those counties than have some of these online auctions.
Yeah, and you can download those right here, clicking on the Florida list. This is where we have all of the list downloads, including the counties that don't hold online auctions or that have their lists available online. So, we've got a mix here of counties. Some of them do have stuff online, some of them don't.
Yeah, and you can go through and click on the right-hand side over there in preview. So you don't have to download each list and just kind of look through the list and see, how many properties are available, how the list is essentially set up, and kind of decide which list you'd like to download as well.
Yeah. Yeah, but there are a ton of properties there and good opportunities. You know, the nice thing about over-the-counter investing is you're earning 18% on whatever it is you buy. So it's a pretty good, healthy return compared to anything else.
Yeah, and also, you know, the foreclosure's pretty simple. All you're going to do is fill out the deed application, pay the roll-up, and the county's going to do the rest. So that makes it easy as well.
Yeah, it's true. It is a real hands-off. In fact, out of any state in the country, Florida probably makes their foreclosure almost easier than anybody else. Sounds like South Carolina's is pretty easy though too.
Yeah.
So
Colorado's pretty easy too, but
yeah,
you know, they've been doing this a long time. They've been doing more lien sales than probably anyone in the country.
yeah, absolutely. Well, good. I think that pretty much wraps it up here for us tonight. You know, if you have any question or anything you'd like to ask us, send us an email, and you know, we'd love to hear from you, especially if you need help with anything. Be sure to let us know.
Yeah, you guys have a great week.